Yeah, so yeah, I think it can be helpful to try to understand what the other person might have been thinking when he or she said whatever it was that he or she said. Yeah, so I think sometimes something that happens, unfortunately, in situations where there's a misunderstanding, conflict between men and women, specifically about things that seem gender related, but might not actually be, in terms of like the mind of the person who said whatever it was that set off the conflict, right? Men, from what I have noticed, right, from what I have experienced in my life, men are not as nice to each other as I think like a number of women seem to think that they are. I mean, I think there may be women who don't realize what men are really like to each other, and what they think is happening is that, like, all these guys sit around together, whether they're working or they're socializing or whatever it is, and it's all like really very cozy, and they're all like, oh, our money and power and maleness are so fabulous, and you're not probably fabulous, not necessarily the word that they use, but we're so great, and aren't you great, and I'm so great. And I think maybe what they don't realize is, yeah, there are a lot of men who are really pretty blatantly not interested in women having kind of generally as much power as a group as men do, right? And I think there are men who are blatantly not interested. There are men who have sexist attitudes that they know about, and may not and don't feel bad about, but may not like talk to people about very much specifically. There are men who have sexist attitudes that they don't realize that they have them. I mean, power is power. It is a different. It takes something. It takes something. In terms of character and awareness, to relinquish power that you automatically have, and that's what it means. Like a sensitive man is not necessarily someone who cries in movies. It's somebody who recognizes that he has an advantage socially. Physically, usually men have an advantage over women regardless. But socially, for a man to recognize that socially, professionally, he is given all sorts of advantages automatically that the women around him usually don't have, right? Women have to work much harder to be respected. They just do. It's been that way for a long time, and there are efforts to change it. But I think it's good to look at kind of like all of a situation and not just create a new set of stereotypes about how men and women act. So if you have really spent time with men in groups, kind of being themselves, you even guys who are friends. I'm talking about guys who are friends with each other. They say all kinds of things to each other. They don't. I mean, traditionally, I think these are changed to a certain extent. But traditionally, the idea is that like women are like really nice to each other's faces, but then they're like saying all these things all the time that are like catty and blah blah blah. But that to have like kind of some kind of like open conflict between women, you would actually specifically say something to somebody's face, very specifically about something that's derogatory or whatever it is, and that means it's like open warfare all of a sudden, right, between women. But the thing is, guys say things all the time to each other that are really and guys who are friends with each other that are like really rude, and like really basically insulting. I mean, guys are like insulting to each other frequently, right? And it's like part of their friendship. And whether that's a good thing or a bad thing, I don't know. But it's definitely part of it, like picking on each other, and it's just kind of about like whatever, about like whatever. Things that I think the culture's changing a little bit in terms of how women, the idea of how women in groups behave, or women in friendships behave, that kind of thing. And honestly, I don't really know that much about how just kind of like just sort of a generic group of women behave, because for the past 5 years, I've mostly been around homeless women, and homeless women say everything. There's really if a homeless woman has not said it, you haven't heard it. I mean, it's just kind of the way it is. So what I was thinking about with, in regard to the situation with that guy at the conference, was I don't know that he was really meaning to insult anybody, right? I mean, he said what he said, right? And then it seems like there were women who responded by saying, you know, why aren't you, basically their concern was, I mean, if their stated concern was, why aren't you just thinking of us as colleagues? And I think maybe what he might have said, or what he might have been thinking, not what he might have said because I don't want to quote somebody, but what he might have been thinking was, but I was thinking of you as colleagues. That's how I was thinking of you. Why? Right? And of course, he only would have gotten himself into more trouble if he had actually said this thought of, I was thinking of you as colleagues. Why? Do you think you look like supermodels? You know you're not that hot, don't you? Which of course would not have helped at all, but very possibly was in fact what he was thinking, right? Because everybody likes to be good looking, right? I mean, I don't really think there's that many people out there who have been really, really good looking who are like, gosh, I wish I were ugly. That doesn't happen that much. But I think guys tend to kind of take stock of those things, you know, in a kind of, not quite the same way that women do. You know, it's not so much that they are not prized for being good looking, because they certainly are. And it's not that they don't get advantages for being good looking, because they do. Although I think probably I think there are times when there's, you know, there is a type of harassment that can happen to good-looking guys too, kind of depending on where they are and how much power they have. That's the thing, you know. It's always kind of a difficult issue.